Jeff.
I'm Kelly.
And we're with Simply Well Seniors, and our mission is to help seniors navigate the journey to the next place they call home. And navigate, it is a journey from thinking about it to actually physically moving to getting settled, and it goes like this.
So, and the next place you call home might be home. It's just whatever journey you're on, the process and the steps involved in transitioning from one phase to the next. So it's a loose term.
So a little bit of housekeeping. This is us. And we've named this seminar series the Aging Well Seminar Series. We all are aging, and we just want to do it well. And it ties in with our brand, Simply Well. So a few housekeeping items today. So this room here is sponsored by Fidelity Bank, and it's available for free seminars like this. The bathrooms are right out the door to the right of the elevator. If you need to go to the bathroom, and we'll go about an hour or so, and we'll stop now and then to solicit any questions that anybody has, or any comments, or anything that anybody would like to add or have a question about.
We can also do them at the end. Whatever comes up, you can let us know. We did include in your clipboards just a flyer from today's event because we had extras printed, so we gave everyone extra copy. But then you'll also see a handout that has some of the information. On the flip side of the handout, we'll have a space for notes if there's anything specific you wanted to jot down, either a question or anything that resonates with you today. You could do that as well. And then we also include a feedback form for the seminar. We're always looking for feedback on how we can present better, differently, address things that maybe we didn't talk about, or any topics that you might like to hear about in the future. We are doing these once a month, all different topics. We've got them planned out through the whole year. So there's a little bit of something for everyone, but we're always open to suggestions. So we'll not take anything personal or critical. We just want to hear from you so that we can be better and make better presentations for everybody.
So with that said, let's jump on in to the topic that we're talking about today, communicating with adult children. Not necessarily your adult children, but children or others that you're communicating with about these types of subjects.
So if I took a poll or a survey just with you folks today on the topic, what would you say your number one communication challenge might be with communicating? Not necessarily, this is about with your adult children, but it might be a niece, a nephew, a close friend or a neighbor, somebody that you're aligning with to help communicate towards the next phases of your life. Are there any specific things that come to mind that are difficulties? Some examples might be time. You just don't really find the time or have the time to make the time to have that conversation. It could be personality with either a child who maybe is controlling or not available, really busy with their own life, so you might not take the time for that. Some people just say, I'm not dead yet. I'm not having these conversations because I'm not ready. I'm not ready to do it. So breaking the ice. Distance might be an issue. If somebody lives far away, it might be hard to find that time to sit and talk or talk over the phone because you're trying to catch up on just everyday life. So it's kind of hard to bring this conversation up. And then just different conflicting or opposing frames of reference of what you might be thinking, what someone else is thinking. So those are kind of the biggest roadblocks or barriers, if you will, to people coming up with having this conversation.
So just a few facts here. So this is what's happening. These are facts. So your adult children are having conversations about you with or without your knowledge. Dinner with friends or other families in this generation, getting together because this seems to be a topic that we're all kind of navigating as well. Adult children of aging parents may have conflicting goals related to their roles as caregivers. Again, the distance, particularly, may not allow an adult child to be the caregiver if they're far away, or just the busyness of their lives or their abilities, or quite frankly, they may be aging to a point where they need help themselves. People are living so much longer. Mm-hmm. How many people here know, people in their 80s that you say they're not in their 80s and they don't have kids in their 60s.
Right.
But they do, and there are. Aging also creates conflicting goals, for certain individuals, but effective communication is the responsibility of the communicator. And I'll say that again, because that's really important, that effective communication is the responsibility of the communicator, the person giving the message to be effective. It's their responsibility. It's not necessarily the responsibility of the receiver, the child, the adult child, or niece, nephew, to decipher what you're trying to say. You need to be clear in what you're trying to say the best way you can. That was a cool slide. How did we do that? That's cool. Okay.
It's like ripping a piece of paper off. Yeah. So we find with relationships with adult children and their families is that there's different types of children or different types of people that you would talk to. There's some that are uninvolved. They just have busy lives. They don't really have anything to do with your situation. You're just not someone that you would think to call or really rely on. Then you have the supportive and available if needed. Those are maybe adult children that live somewhere else or are busy with their own lives, but if you picked up the phone and said, hey, I need a ride to the doctor's office or I need some help, they're supportive and they're, sure, absolutely, I'll help you, but they're not calling you every 5 minutes. What do you need this week? They're just kind of there and you can count on them. Kind of like an old friend. You don't talk for a long time, months, years even. You pick up the phone and you pick up where you left off. So those people are supportive and available if needed. And then we have supportive and actively involved. Those are the folks that are always checking in with you once a week, being proactive and saying, is there anything you need this week? I'm running to the grocery store. Do you need me to pick something up? Do you need a ride? Do you need anything? And then we have controlling and unavailable. Jeff's going to talk about the next couple ones, but we all know people that are controlling and unavailable that want to be involved in all your business, but when you actually need their help, they're not there to help you. They just have a strong opinion about something one way or another. And they're almost like a gnat or a pain. You're almost hesitant to even want to hear from them because they're always voicing what they think you should do, but they're not available to be part of the solution. They're just adding to the problem or the situation.
And some people that fall into that category might be if you have a son that's an attorney. He might be uninvolved, but he has an opinion, and he'll certainly give you it, and then become uninvolved again. So controlling and actively involved, now that's always fun, right? That's sometimes you probably know some people in your life like that. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's a daughter that's a nurse. I don't know. Sometimes they're like really in there.
Which can be a good thing, not a bad thing. But sometimes they know a lot more than the average person. So sometimes it makes it more difficult because they're thinking 5 steps ahead of what potentially could be going on, and they can be somewhat controlling because they know too much information.
Right. Then proxy decision makers by design, which is a nice situation, actually, because if there are decisions that need to be made in the future, and that was thought through and thought about, that person knows their role, it's been discussed, and it's someone that will step in, when those decisions have to be made. And then there's proxy decision makers by default. The person that might have to make those decisions, and it wasn't discussed earlier, but they're put in that position, in that situation, particularly if there's a crisis.
We call those kind of the firefighters. They're coming in at the crisis moment, trying to just put out the fire however they know how, whatever resources they have at the moment. So they're not, it's not planned and controlled, it's just fire hose, and whatever happens, happens.
So which one of these do you think are the least fun to work with, if you had to take a guess? There you go. That's true. Controlling and unavailable. Proxy by default.
Yeah.
They're in the crisis as well. But what the folks that we do like to work with, supportive and available if needed. That's always a great situation to have those people and point them out. Supportive and actively involved. That's another group of families that pull together. And then proxy decision by design. Again, that they thought it through. Who's going to make the decisions. They've already been activated.
And just a point on that, the proxy decision makers making the decision, and our whole point is here today talking about the decisions that you've communicated to them that you want them to make. So not they're making their own decision based on whatever situation they have, but based on what your wishes are and what you are looking for, which is another reason having communication open and early is so important. So.
You know, it's best when families work together when they're all informed, as Kelly said, that you want to make sure you speak out and speak up and give this information to the folks that need this. So what we're trying to move to today is from someone that's controlling and uninvolved to supportive and actively involved, or supportive and actively involved when needed to be. So to move people from there. All right, let's move on. So facts about communication. Verbal communication is one type of communication. We all know that there's other types of communication that impact what the receiver is getting. 55% of the impact results on how you appear. So if I came to this meeting this morning and I was in my sweatpants and a torn sweatshirt and my hair was a mess, you'd probably say, "Whoa, what kind of information does he have to share with me today?"
Or if you were having this conversation with your adult child or person that you're designating, and you've had an unfortunate event, you're in the hospital, you're in a Johnny, or you haven't shaved, your hair is a mess, you're kind of in a position or in an appearance where you're not normally the way you look, it automatically changes the tone of the conversation. Because now as your adult child is sitting at your bedside talking to you, they're seeing you in a different light than when you're in the kitchen cooking like you normally do, or when you're out in the garage, or when you're at church, or when you're somewhere where you normally are. So we're also talking a lot about, with the communication, is trying to have that conversation when you are feeling your best, when you're looking your best. For ladies, you have your makeup on, you have your hair done, you're dressed nice like you normally would dress. So your kids see you as strong and vibrant, that when you're telling them these things or having these communications, they're seeing you as mom or dad the way they know you, not in, "Oh my gosh, mom just had a stroke and now we can't communicate." So that's also what we're really trying to convey here. So
the best time to communicate, these types of messages, again, how you appear, also how you sound, how you give across that message. And then it's funny that only 7% is what you're actually saying. But you put all that together and the message gets received. Lack of intentional and direct communication results in assumptions and miscommunications. And I think I see a few heads nodding that we don't want assumptions and miscommunication. I think this is what mom and dad wanted. I heard them say this once, I think. I'm not sure. But direct communication will clear that out. Kelly's going to talk a little bit about a resource that we found that has been really kind of eye-opening, and a lot of this information has been gleaned from this particular book.
Yes, so this book is called The Other Talk, and it's written by Tim Prosch, and we'll leave this out for people to look at the end and write it down. But I recommend everybody buying this book. It's available on Amazon, and it's cleverly worded or titled The Other Talk, because they think about the first talk is when you have the talk with your kids about the birds and the bees, and how that difficult talk is. And if you can remember doing it with your kids, or having your parents do it with you, it's always different in every situation. But it's one of those things like, do you just leave a book on their bed? Do you hope their neighbor or their cousin's going to tell them? Like, you don't know how to do it. And this is the other talk that's as much anxiety or no real manual or roadmap to how to do it. But this book really spells it out. It's written for the adults to talk to their child about, but it's also good for your adult children to read it. And so just a couple of things that I highlighted in this book that I wanted to talk about. Actually, I think one of the statistics in here is that the National Hospice Foundation found that 75% of Americans don't make their end-of-life decisions known to their families, either through verbal or written communication. Now, a lot of people that we deal with in our business do have wills and have things in place, but they don't talk about a lot of the other things from where you are today to when you actually need to read the will, like the gap in between the end-of-life living stuff. And then also stated that 55% of adult children have talked to their parents about what to do if they can't live independently at some point. So only 55%, I should say. So that's better than, half of people do, but a lot of people don't. And one other point that was really important that I saw in this book is a lot of times we hear from clients saying, well, I don't want to burden my kids. I don't want to tell them about all this stuff. I don't want to talk about it. When they need to know, they'll need to know. But what they're saying in this book, they did a lot of interviewing with hundreds of people to kind of focus group discussions to find out information to be able to write this book from people's different perspective. And they said that the unfortunate consequence of protecting your kids is that when circumstances eventually force your family to confront reality, whether it's a serious injury, a severe financial setback, or a life-threatening diagnosis, your kids will be reacting in crisis mode if you haven't discussed this first. So it's going to be, if they have to react in crisis mode, your options for what's going to happen to you as the adult will be likely dramatically restricted. So the choices and the options are going to be less if no one's talked about it before and a crisis occurs. So kind of, again, the undertone. We're not trying to make this gloom and doom, but we just see it so much in our business that Jeff and I actually joke around that we are firefighters. We feel like we're coming in to really save the family, save the house when they get into a crisis and help them get to the next stop or the next step. So one other quick point on this book. I'm really loving this so much that I would love to start a book club or a focus group on this book. If anyone's interested in getting it and reading it, I would love to have some discussion around it, because I feel like this one book could change the life of so many seniors, and it will change the life for us dealing with our kids, and for you hopefully dealing with yours, and just generations to come. So I can't say enough good about it, but it's really wonderful. So if anyone's interested in that, we can talk about it later, but I would love to be involved in something more with this book. Basically, when you start to have the conversation with your kids, you might say, well, I'd like to talk about, the what ifs in our life. What if this happens? What would be a good scenario? And a lot of times when you start to have that, the son or daughter may say, oh, Mom, let's just relax. I just want to have a cup of tea and watch the game. We can talk about this later. And it's easy to say, okay, you're right, we'll talk about it later. But what we find is sometimes the later never comes, or the later doesn't come until you absolutely have the crisis or the event that happens. So trying to be firm in that you want to have a discussion and set a time to do that so that your family's all around. If you want all your kids there, if you just want one or two of the kids that you're going to target to be your person, so to speak, to really value your life as so much that to know the importance of this conversation and how it's going to have a ripple effect for your family and for yourself. So sometimes people like to do it at the holidays or Christmas, Thanksgiving, just because that's when all the family's there, but it also can be a difficult time to do it because you want to celebrate the holidays. So we recommend doing it at a different time when it's not a holiday, but it really depends on what's best for you.
Mm-hmm. And establishing the ground rules as well. Establishing ground rules and circumstances or triggers that would indicate a change in responsibilities. So recognizing that, just putting those up front. And most likely it's going to be a series of conversations. It might be an icebreaker at first, and then schedule a time to expand on it and let it sink in and those kinds of things. And for folks to ask questions. And do some research too. So, everybody's good now. We're good. I'm good. We're all good, right? Everybody's feeling good. This is where we're at right here. This is a graphic from the National Institute on Aging about frailty. and the stages of 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 frailty. And the we're all going to move through this. Where we're really fit, robust. Like I said, we all know folks in their 70s or 80s that are just out there doing it and getting on the bike or climbing the mountain or traveling, or they're good. We know some folks that are in their 50s that aren't great, but that eventually moves to that you're doing well. Maybe there's some some physical ailments, some aches and some pains and that kind of thing. You're not riding 50 miles on your bike anymore. Maybe you're riding 10, even if you're getting on it. And then you move into you're managing. You're managing. You're getting some help. You're getting some services possibly. You're making some decisions that you're going to stay closer to your home or your community or where you're not going to venture out as much. Then we get down into moderately frail. You may need some help in the house, bathing or getting out or just getting around. That moves into a stage of when you're vulnerable, when you're while not dependent, you are for certain things, and then moves through very severely frail all the way to terminally ill. The point that this slide is trying to make is there's a lot of stages between where you are here and then where you are here. Sometimes though it does go quick, that there's an event. Maybe there's a fall in a hospital stay where you don't get out. Maybe there's a stroke, maybe there's a heart attack. Maybe it just goes boom, like that. But there's a lot, this is what Kelly was talking about, the gap between here and here. There's a lot of time between there to discuss. And I see everybody's kind of thinking. And I just brought the mood down, didn't I? that we're looking over here and
we know that we're all going to die at some point. I mean, that's just a fact of life. No one is going to live forever. But what we want to do is die well. We want to have that process be as in control as we can be to the end. And this is kind of ironic or special day for me, Valentine's Day today. My dad died on Valentine's Day 4 years ago today. And one of the gifts that we had from him was he really planned things out. And I had the chance to really know what he wanted. My whole family did. He had spelled everything out, all the what ifs, all the scenarios. He knew that he couldn't live in his house, age in his house well, because his house our house that I grew up in was a old farmhouse, and there was really narrow staircase. The bedrooms are all upstairs. There was a bathroom downstairs, but there was no real good place for a bedroom downstairs. So he decided to sell his house and move in advance. They moved to a condo, and they remodeled their bathroom. They had a small bathroom with a shower stall. They took out the tub. They made a really great walk-in shower. They really modified their house to be able to age in place. And they did it while they were well, so that when the crisis happened for my dad, we weren't saying, oh my gosh, we got to get a contractor out here and redo the bathroom. We've got to create a bedroom somewhere that we didn't have. So I guess part of that is, while I'm saying some of this, is again, we're trying to make people aware that now is the time. And one of my favorite quotes, I don't know really originally where it originated from, maybe even from the Bible, I'm not sure, but it's, if not now, when? And knowing that tomorrow isn't promised, we don't know what our situation will be, but to be able to plan ahead as if today is the day that we feel good and we're going to work on some of this stuff. Because working in healthcare for as long as I did, I saw so many opportunities where people couldn't return home because their house was not set up. Everybody wanted to age in place, but all of a sudden they couldn't go home, or they couldn't go home right now because they didn't have things set up. So that's really an important thing. We're going to have a whole seminar next month about aging in place and talk about a lot of those resources. But if you learn one thing from today, it's just thinking ahead, being proactive, and trying to be as in control as you can about what your next steps are. Because if you don't identify and communicate what they are to the people you want to tell them to, someone else is going to be making the decisions for you. And that's what we want to avoid. We want you to all be in control of your life.
Thanks for sharing that. So here are some conversational topics. And like Kelly said, it's up to you to make those decisions. And rather than having somebody else make those decisions, I mean, how would you like for Kelly and I to make all those decisions, for you and not even inform us about what you want, what you need? For people we don't even know, maybe. You wouldn't want that. It's a rhetorical question. You don't want Kelly and I to make all the decisions for you. But that seems to be kind of what happens when planning doesn't happen. People's friends, whether they like them or not, they're helping your adult children now plan for the future without your input, and having no family tradition or cultural values involved, without them having the information that they need to be able to make those decisions. So here's some conversational topics and some starters.
Yeah, so we're talking about financing and money management. Most folks that we work with have worked with financial planners. They have good retirement portfolios. They feel prepared for the future. What we're finding from talking with a lot of financial planners and with families is because of the longevity of people are living a lot longer than they did previously. So sometimes the wealth that you've accumulated can run out quickly or can be distributed differently than you had planned, depending on a catastrophic event. So just being conversation about where you want things to end up. Do you want to have 24-hour home care if you needed it? Do you want to have money set aside to maybe go to a retirement community where you could transition from an independent living situation to a nursing home or to a memory care unit? Most people now, we're living short and dying long, as we talked about. Some of the more chronic diseases are, Alzheimer's and chronic COPD, things that may be more cancers that are long, slow-moving cancers. So those are some of the things that could eat up a lot of our money that we've saved for retirement. So we have to talk about those situations. And the current and future living arrangements. Most people we talk to want to age in place. They want to live at home through their life, which is wonderful if you can do that. Sometimes it's the home you're in, but maybe sometimes it's getting a different home that will meet your needs, or modifying the one you're in. So thinking about that, sometimes our adult children will say, Mom and Dad, I want you to move here, move to Florida, move to wherever, Chicago, wherever they live.
Look, I built an apartment behind the house.
Yeah, I built it. I want you to come live with us. And it might be convenient for them, but it may not be what you want. So those are things you have to have those conversations early. We've heard stories of people having an apartment already built and then saying, Mom and Dad came out for a visit and surprise, here's your new house. And they didn't even know that this was going to be an option. And they felt terrible because their son and his wife had just built this beautiful place for them, but they didn't want to leave where they had lived their whole life. So sometimes there's good intentions, but if they never had the conversation, those things come up, and then you're in a situation where they're almost angry because we just built this beautiful apartment for you. What do you mean you don't want to live with us? And you might not. So those are really important. Driving and transportation arrangements. We all know at some point, we've heard all the stories of some adult child taking mom or dad's keys away.
Or disconnecting the battery.
Disconnecting the battery, the spark plug. I know if I have to do that to Jeff someday,
I'll just
he'll
get
be able to
another
fix
car.
it. Yeah. So those are tough things. We'd rather have a conversation up front to say, if you notice that I'm, if I come home and there's the whole right side of the car is smashed up and I don't know what happened, or if you notice that I've gone to the grocery store 3 times in the last month and I've gotten lost coming home, or I've had to call for a ride. If somebody in your family starts to notice these things, I'm giving you permission now to be able to tell us or to have another conversation with us at that time. You'd rather know, even though you'll be upset if they came to you and said, I think it's time to take the keys away. We're all going to be upset when someone tells us that. But if we've had the conversation ahead of time and we trust the person and they come to us and say, it might be time. But what's your solution? There's a lot of great driving and transportation companies out there besides the Martin van. that private cars that will pick you up and bring you to the grocery store or bring you to a doctor's appointment, or maybe it's arranging with your family member. But those are conversations to talk about. And again, with getting to medical appointments and personal care. And even the question of what if the home care that you've set up for your end-of-life care doesn't show up? Who's the backup plan? We know a lot of home health aides that have wonderful hearts and mean really well, but a lot of times they're not paid a lot of money, so they don't have the best cars, so they're not reliable transportation, and you're depending on someone to show up and give you a shower, but they don't come. Their child is sick or something happens. So it's always good to have the what if questions, conversations. And of course the end of life arrangements.
Having all these conversations. And there's a lot of other topics as well. You can
Yeah.
insert yours as needed. So any questions about any of this information? Anybody want to add anything? No? Okay. So the communication cycle, and we're just going to go through a little bit of this. This is kind of fun, actually. So this is how it's supposed to work, right? Jeff picks up the phone, he calls Kelly. Kelly picks up the end of the phone, we have a conversation, we understand each other, we hang up the phone. Wonderful. Isn't that great? It doesn't always happen like that. Maybe Jeff picks up the phone and Kelly doesn't understand anything Jeff's saying.
Right.
And then they hang up the phone and now there's confusion and there's misinformation. So the different stages of a conversation or communication. There's a sender, there's a receiver, there's a message, and there's feedback. And all those points are important. That the sender, obviously, is the one sending the message, but that message has to be clear enough for the receiver to understand. And how does the sender know that the receiver understood that? Well, there's feedback that's coming back that can confirm that they understand what you're saying. So that looks very easy, and that should be easy to accomplish, right? No. There's this thing called noise that gets in the middle of it all right? And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but the sender is taking this message and encoding it to the receiver, who then has to decode that message, who then has to send the feedback back to the sender, and sometimes there's some noise in there. And the noise might be a personality conflict or a different way of communicating. There might be some other conflicting issues going on that's kind of adding to this. There might be some resentment, actually, that might be lingering, that's out there that hasn't been dealt with. Also, the person's field of experience. I took the example of the son that's the attorney. So they're going to look at things with a different lens, particularly. Just because it's their field of experience, or maybe they're in the medical field, and a daughter that's a nurse. They're going to potentially give you feedback that's, involves their field of experience. So there's a lot that goes on, and you might have realized all that, or maybe not. So the encoding is an important step here. You as a communicator, you need to be clear, organized, and have a concise message. So that might be some work ahead of having a conversation. Collecting some supporting facts, doing some research, having some examples, possibly some experience with others that you've seen, have had this kind of conversation or have dealt with these kind of things in the past. But gathering this information and being ready. Basically, I think we said at the beginning of the talk here is that I joked with Steve that we wouldn't ask you to come in this room and say, "Hey, okay, you're going to present today." Okay, say, "Oh, I don't know anything about this. I don't have any knowledge. I don't have any expertise in this." So it's the same kind of thing, that having these kinds of conversations with adult children, you haven't done this before necessarily, so. You got to do a little bit of groundwork first.
Yeah, and none of us have, and that's why we're again promote this book, because it is a good guideline to be able to start thinking about this. And sometimes just saying, I absolutely, no matter what you do, I am not going to XYZ nursing home. Do not ever put me there. Maybe you know somebody that's been there. Not that none of us probably ever want to end up in a nursing home, but if there's some things you really feel strongly about, to be able to tell your kids, absolutely not. But if you say, you know what, I have visited some folks over at XYZ, and this place seems really friendly and nice. If I ever had to go there, or if I had to go to a memory care unit at some point, I think this place would be nice. I think I like this place, or whatever. I guess we're thinking to have had those thoughts in your mind so that you feel better about sharing that with your kids, so that they're not sitting at dinner with their friends saying, well, if mom gets Alzheimer's, I guess she's going to wherever, because that's where my friend Mary's mother went, and that was a good place. So they're already thinking what they're going to do. If you don't tell them what you want, then it makes a really big disconnect.
Mm-hmm. It's also important that the person giving the message, the encoding part of this, it has the appreciation of the recipient's field of knowledge, their feelings and their circumstances, that they may be in the middle of a crisis themselves with an in-law, potentially, in their field of knowledge. That could be very helpful, actually, by having an appreciation for that. Then establishing intention and expectations regarding the feedback. What do you want to hear from them, and how do you want to hear it from them? And knowing what the triggers are. I mean, I know sometimes I can hear my kids' eyes rolling over the phone. I know what the triggers are,
yeah.
And they know what mine are too.
Right.
But to get that out in the open.
And also just maybe even having the conversations with your kids. If you've had any things in the past, any bumps in the road, so to speak, with your relationship with your kids, it's not a bad idea to say, is there anything in our past relationship that you want to talk about? Like trying to almost make peace with your kids about anything that happened in childhood or happened as an adult. Did you have a really bad argument one time that you feel really sorry about? Or did something happen that you need to kind of clear the air? And I know when my mom was passing, she died at home on hospice, and my brother and my sister and I were all sitting around her bed, and we were joking with her and saying, Mom, remember that time that you found the beer cans over by the mailbox? Or my brother, the washing machine was full of sand and nobody knew what happened. And so we were kind of joking but confessing about all these stories about things we did as kids that we didn't get caught doing. So those are lighthearted, kind of fun things. And she joked with us, this was just a few days before she died, that under the circumstances she wasn't going to ground us because, she'd rather us sitting by her bed than be up in a timeout. So, but it's just getting those stories out now as an adult, or getting those kind of mending things over is really important, because the last thing you want is your child or you to have resentment at the end of your life. And you want, if everybody can be peaceful at the time, as peaceful as can be, it's really good, and it's good for your soul, your heart, your spirit, to be able to, and for them to get through some of those roadblocks now while you're healthy and can do that.
So that's what we're talking about, some of that noise that can happen in that conversation. Personality and behavioral styles, communication styles, family dynamics, and emotional baggage. That's just a few of the things that can get in the way of these conversations. But you might be sitting there saying, our family doesn't have any of that. Well, congratulations, that's great. This is gonna go really good for you then. So back to some of the impediments of effective communication. Let me see, what slide are we on? 14. Okay. That, again, we were talking about the sender may lack clarity, lacks confidence in what they're communicating. Again, maybe they didn't get rid of that noise. Maybe the person that you're trying to send this message to is unable to process that message satisfactorily for whatever reason. Or the sender fails to integrate feedback into future communications. That's important, that the feedback part happens as well. That then if there's additional conversations in the future, then you can integrate that and you can say, yes, I heard that. I heard you say that to me and give me that feedback. I mean, feedback can obviously be verbal or nonverbal. Some feedback could be no feedback. That's feedback. that nothing came back. Avoidance. But the feedback that you really want is to, some next steps and some action items potentially, and to have additional conversations, and to clarify that that message was received and was understood the way you wanted to give it.
Yeah, and this is, as Jeff was saying, not a one and done. You'll probably have this conversation, kind of updates, like you might update once a year or twice a year with your financial planner. You can do updates to where things are at with your health and your wellness and your plans. And once you've had the big conversation to kind of get it started, then the little conversations are much easier to have because you've already kind of gotten that out there that you are open to talking about the what ifs. And just change them as things happen. But at least the kids won't all be sitting around the table after something bad or a big event has happened and say, I think mom would have wanted this, or I think dad would have wanted this. No, I think he told me that, but nobody really knows because you didn't talk about it. So we're just hoping that to get more conversations around tables with people so that when we come in to see people at their stages that we get called in to help out, a lot of the things have been discussed, and we see it a lot. We see a lot of good stuff too, but we've seen some situations where families haven't had the conversations, and it makes it really difficult for everybody.
And not only the physical work that's involved, but everyone that's around with maybe some regrets or some need in themselves to do something because maybe they were away, for a very long time and they came back. And we had, a recent situation where someone was in Japan actually. And he came back from Japan and cleaned his parents' house out by himself. He didn't have to do that, but have a sense of responsibility. That's what he had to do, and part of his process too. He did a great job too.
Yeah, he did.
It's fantastic. So here's anybody want to add anything to that? No? Okay. So we're getting close to the end here. So here's a few conversation invitations. And I believe these are in your pamphlets as well. So you might start with, hey, I went to this seminar the other day and I want to share with you what I learned. When do you have some time to get together? That's a good opener. Or your dad and I are making estate plans and would like to share with you what we are thinking. This is important because you're not asking for permission. You're saying, I'd like to share with you what we're thinking. I'm not asking you, what do you think we should do? It's just sharing the information. There may be a part of that as well if you have a question, if someone has a field of expertise. But it's more about you telling them or telling other folks that you want to know what it is your agenda is, and not necessarily asking for permission. And then when would be a good time for us to schedule a time to talk? I have some things that are important to me that I want to run by you. Those are some pretty good openers. And I like this one really. I realize that we may be entering some uncharted territory in the future as I have more and more birthdays, AKA I'm getting older. Someone told me that as I get old, that doesn't mean that he's getting old. as a child of someone that's older. I have put some thoughts down on paper and would like to talk to you about them. And Kelly mentioned this earlier as well, is that the goal is to make life easier on everybody, on the adult and the adult child. So write some things are written down, your feedback is welcome and appreciated. Yeah. So that's the goal, ultimately, really, to make life easier. Life's hard enough as we go through it, but recognizing that there's that gap that some folks have gone through, or may have gone through, or planning on going through, the estate plan and the will and the healthcare proxy, and have all those things in place when they're needed. But there's life that's being lived before that time too, and stages that go through that. So recognizing that is important.
Yeah, and just to tag on to this bottom one, it's saying that, how the children play a multidimensional emotional price for taking on that role. If you haven't talked about it, a lot of times they have guilt and feelings of inadequacy. Did they make the right decision? Did they do? They're in that fight or flight mode where if you're in a bad situation, so they're trying to make a decision harshly or trying to act how they think they should, but they're stressed. The shock of trying to navigate the medical system. As we get older, we have more doctor's appointments. We spend more time going into the hospital, the doctor's office. So we're kind of getting used to the medical environment. A lot of the younger adult children maybe go to a doctor's appointment, but they're not as seasoned to what we see when they're not seeing wheelchairs going down the hallway at a doctor's appointment or a nurse helping someone get on and off the exam room table the way that we might be more accustomed with it. Or our friends are aging, we see people with walkers or canes or whatever. So we're kind of automatically getting used to it, so to speak. And they may also feel helpless with the financial decisions that need to be made because sometimes they're put in the position of what to do, where to have you go to the next step, and they don't know financially what you would have wanted. So they're put in a situation which can be difficult for everybody. I know we've said that a bunch of different ways today, but it seems like that's when we see folks in the crisis mode where people just panic and they want to do right by you, but they don't know because they haven't gotten the direction from you. So that's what we're hoping today's message is loud and clear, so to speak.
That wraps it up for today. So we'll be around. We'll take some questions.
And we have the Aging in Place next month, strategies for staying put. So we're going to have a panel discussion. So you won't be just Jeff and I talking next month. It'll be we're going to have a social worker who works for Summit Elder Care, which is the whole focus of it is to have people age in place with supportive services from their services. They're part of the Fallon Health System, so they're going to be here. We have another social worker who's coming, who's going to talk about, she has a private practice, so she'll come to your house and do counseling and do coordination of medical appointments and things like that. And we have someone from a transportation company coming that will also be on our panel during that seminar that will help bring you to doctor's appointments, transport you in and out of your house, things like that, whatever you need. So that's a really good one if you're interested in that or know someone who might be. And then the April event is the assisted living. We're going to have hopefully three different assisted living communities in our area who are going to come and talk a little bit about their communities. And if nothing else, they'll invite you for free lunch, and they have great cookies usually. So it's worth going. It's nice to just tour some of these places. But anyways, nothing is high pressure, high sales. None of this is. It's meant to be educational. We want you to just find out about some different topics that you maybe had not thought of before. We hope people go home feeling better than feeling overwhelmed and worse. That wasn't our intention today. We're just trying to give you some food for thought, and we're always available as resources if you need us.
Yeah. So thanks for coming, and
thank
we
you.
hope to see you next month too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, two other books I didn't mention, if you guys
yeah.
want to write them down. This one is Stage Not Age. And this one is talking about, as Jeff mentioned, you could have a 50-year-old who's super healthy or really sick, or an 80-year-old who looks like they're 40. So this is talking about different stages, and it's excellent. And then this one is how to say it to seniors, and I'll leave these on the back table. This one's really good for your kids to read, but it's also good for you to read. And some of these books in the coursework that we did to become certified senior housing professionals, we did a lot of reading and a lot of research, and these books were wonderful. And we've marked them all up. We give them out to people. We'd actually like to give copies away of these two today because we only have one more copy left of the other talk. But so I don't know how we want to do the raffle for that, but we can do that.
Let's see. Who would like one of these?
Who would like one of these? They're
Someone?
here for the giving. If someone has a strong interest in one, we're happy to. Okay, so
Okay,
you
Debbie,
can pick which one we
Which
want.
one would you like?
How to say it to seniors?
Very
Okay.
good.
And then anyone interested in the Stage Not Age? Maggie, you look like you might be. I think it'd be good for you. Yeah, absolutely. The other one? Yes, absolutely. I can't give you my copy because it's the only one I have, but we have more ordered. They are available on Amazon. But if anyone's interested in getting them and then doing kind of like a book study, I think it would be a great thing for us to talk about, and just, I think we can all learn from each other. So if someone has ideas, there's a lot of stuff in the back of actually action steps on how to move forward. So I think we got this one used, I think it was $7
Yeah.
maybe. Brand new, they're $16 or so, but it is great. So if anyone wants to look through that too.
It's on audio as well.
Yeah, an audiobook. So sometimes if you're driving, this is a really great way to listen to the book and not have to read it. I still like to sit and read it with my coffee, or to be able to write in it, highlight, but if you like audiobooks, it's a great way to do it. Yeah.
There's another book that we read years ago called The Boomer Burden.
Okay.
Oh.
And it was really good to read it at the time, because it made you more aware of how you need to, as we as older people, need to clean out our stuff before it becomes a burden for our kids to have to clean out our glasses and not know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So it was a good resource.
The
Good.
Boomer Burden.
The Boomer Burden.
Okay, well, we'll look that one up.
Look that one
Yeah,
up.
definitely.
Yeah, good resources.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Anyone else have any other comments, questions, concerns?
The slide with the communication and the noise in the middle, it's communication these days, as you know, is mostly text.
Right.
We came through a generation of education in the school system that didn't involve any electronic devices.
Right.
Other than the telephone.
Right.
So we're fortunate that we had our children young and early in our marriage. So really, most of our children are pretty much in the same generation we are.
Yes.
And really don't mind calling on the phone and talking on the phone for very long periods of time. Quite often. So we're very fortunate there. Not so fortunate with our grandchildren, who may be in the loop of making some decisions as well.
Good point.
But then it's a text. They prefer a text. And that's the only comment I had about the noise part.
Yeah.
Is that.
No, that is a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll repeat it just because we didn't have a microphone in the past. But what you were saying is that the generation of your children are kind of in the same generation that you're in, and don't mind picking the phone up and having a conversation, which is great. But the next generation below of the grandchildren, the children's children, prefer a text. And I find that frustrating sometimes, that I'll pick up the phone, give a call, I don't get an answer, but 1 second later I'll get a text. I don't want a text. I want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Text, it serves its purpose, but quite often after a text, I have a question in my mind that, what did it mean by that?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right.
Is there something, did I miss something, or should I be reading something into this?
Right. Yeah.
Where that would not occur on a phone call, where you could actually tell when you get an answer on a phone call, the answer could, just by the tone of voice, say, the answer could be, present something to them, the answer could be, yeah, or, yeah, right.
Right.
That's great.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the disadvantage of text, is it's whatever your mind is thinking, how it might go to, can put a whole story together that may not be true because you didn't hear the inflection in their voice or the excitement or the disappointment. So I don't know really how to get around that, other than to keep trying to make a phone call or make a time for a visit where you could sit in front of them and have a conversation quietly with them. But it's distracting. They have children, so you have great-grandchildren that are running around. You try to have a conversation, someone starts crying, a diaper change, a bottle, whatever, and you never finish the conversation because too much is happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That is a really good point. That the children's children are the ones that. And I feel very fortunate that we have generational family that it spans 3 generations. you know, what the generation below us, what their roles are going to be, I don't know if they know yet. You know, some of them are stepping into it, you know, others in other families don't necessarily. But we've heard this term that you know, there's going to be a senior tsunami coming. It's already started. We've been reading books that were written 5 years ago, and they were predicting the senior tsunami now. So and we're going to be part of it too in the next 10 years.
The healthcare systems are overwhelmed. There's not enough people going into geriatric medicine because they make $130,000, where a cardiologist or a anesthesiologist is making $360,000. So the medicine folks are going to the higher paid positions. They're not specializing in gerontology. There are some, but not as much. The home health aides are overwhelmed. You know, healthcare facilities are constantly understaffed. Nurses are overworked. A lot of them are going to the city hospitals or the ERs, things where they're making a lot more money. They're not working in nursing homes. They're not doing private duty as much. So just the actual ability to get care is going to change over time. So it's another reason to enlist your kids now, because you're going to need that backup support when those healthcare workers aren't there or they don't show up for whatever reason. You don't want to be dependent on somebody that you can't depend upon.
Good point.
The presidents don't move, we're golden.
Exactly.
That's right.
A whole bunch of an
That's-
army of folks. that
That's
will
your
help
plan.
you.
That's a good
Yes.
plan.
Yes, right. Sandy, did you have a question or a
I
comment?
had just had a comment.
Okay.
Well, first of all, you guys did a great job. But I also wanted to thank you because this is my first time coming here and I wasn't sure where to go. And I said, I'll have this some signage. Your signage was amazing, right down to the doorways.
Excellent.
I
That's
think
good to
it's,
know.
so thank you very much. Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. All right, so we'll give you the rest of the day back to enjoy
Yeah.
Valentine's Day today.
Right?
Thanks so much for coming.